Crypto prices saw a massive shakeout over the weekend as the crypto market was hit yet again by more bad news, causing many to speculate on whether it can get much worse for the altcoin prices. Well, over the past 2 years, every single time we've seen crypto markets hit by bad news on this scale, we have always seen a massive market recovery happen extremely soon afterwards. I'm going to prove it to you in this video. But is this time the same? With altcoin prices seeing significant sell-offs, can they ever recover back towards the upside? Well, I'm going to answer those questions, and I'm going to talk about the real reason behind the scenes that we saw crypto markets crashing over the weekend, because it's probably not what you think. Do me a favor, hit the like button, and let's get into today's video. Now guys, before we go and check out this chart and understand how history often repeats in crypto and the secret stuff that's been going on behind the scenes over the weekend, let's understand on the shorter term what's happened to Bitcoin and also what's happened to the altcoins. You see, by now I was expecting to see Bitcoin playing in and around this green zone because this week and into next week is looking incredibly bullish on the M2 money supply. But Bitcoin dipped a little bit further than anticipated and goes in line with this kind of pullback here. So has it taken us by surprise? Well, maybe a little bit, because maybe by now I was expecting to see Bitcoin pushing a little bit higher and altcoins getting ready for their major breakout along with Bitcoin. Because when Bitcoin does break this all-time high properly, it's going to take the altcoins with it. But I get it. Is that going to happen anytime soon? Well, let's think about this. What caused the dump over the weekend? The war in the Middle East, I hear you cry. Well, obviously, it took people by surprise. We saw the US drop 3 bombs on Iran, which surprised Iran, so obviously it surprised me and probably everyone else as well. And it seemed to surprise crypto because crypto reacted pretty badly to it. And in fact, the worst reaction we saw from crypto was actually on Sunday, where we then saw Iran saying that they were going to close the Strait of Hormuz, which is obviously a pretty major deal because a lot of the world's oil comes from there. So today we were expecting to see oil prices soaring, the Chinese stock exchange plummet, the FTSE 100 down, SPX down, and we dive across those charts to see that the oil price is up a whopping 0.56% on the day. So what has just happened? Well, have we just been played for fools once more? Well, potentially. You see, the fact that the global stock exchanges and the oil prices are not really reacting particularly seriously to what's happened in the world means that we really shouldn't have seen crypto react quite as strongly as it did. But this has happened to us before, and is secretly the reason why I'm still incredibly bullish, despite the fact that everyone else is panicking pretty aggressively. You see, I took the time today to label up this Bitcoin chart with something that should be of interest to you. You see, over the past few years, lots of major global events have happened that have always resulted in a pretty significant sell-off for Bitcoin and the altcoins, but not always a major sell-off for what happens in the global stock markets. And that's interesting, right? And what's most important to see is what happens after every single one of these major fear events. Basically, Bitcoin goes up a lot. And that's pretty telling to see, particularly because this drama doesn't seem to be affecting the global economy like it's affecting crypto, because crypto is being controlled by something else that's not regulated like the global economy, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But as you can see, on the week of around the 6th of March 2023, Bitcoin price fell around 12-13%, only to then recover strongly back towards the upside after dipping down to around $19,000 and ripping up to around $30,000 just a few weeks after. We then had the FTX liquidation of assets part, where everyone thought FTX was going to sell off all the Solana and everything that it was holding. Lo and behold, that didn't happen. Bitcoin then goes all the way to the upside, another 92%. We then have the Japan carry trade that happened last summer, where we were going to see a global recession hit. Bitcoin fell all the way down to around $50,000, and then by December was up around 113%. Just back in April, was a few months ago, we saw Donald Trump talking about tariffs, sending Bitcoin spiraling to 74k. Bitcoin then recovers 49%. So now we've seen this terrible bad news at the bottom of this little dip towards the downside. Should we be feeling bullish or bearish? Obviously, everyone feels bearish and worried right now, and that's typically how they feel at the bottom of every single one of these dips. But if you go back through history, you would have been pretty damn happy to be buying at the bottom of any one of these dips. But typically people don't. Typically people buy once confidence is restored into the markets, like in and around these zones, okay? And who knows this? Well, the market makers and the smart money. See, the market makers like Wintermute work alongside big exchanges like Binance, Coinbase, etc. to use the opportunity when big news and exciting things take place to liquidate over-leveraged positions. And they do this so they can start moving the price in the opposite direction once they get rid of all the over-leveraged positions. And that's because the exchange will actually lose money if people take big leverage positions and end up winning, because eventually they'll pull their money off the exchange. And people will be like, is this even legal? Well, there's seemingly no law around it, okay? It's just unregulated markets, which is what crypto is. The unregulation makes it volatile, which is why we want to be in it, because that's where you make the money, right? But it's also where people lose the money if they get too cocky, too greedy, and enter the markets at the wrong times. And all they're basically doing is they send money in massive quantities, talking like $7 million of Bitcoin here, $6 million of ETH, $1 million of Solana. They send it to and from an exchange called Wintermute where they can liquidate it, etc. This basically plays around with the supply and demand model, and that's why if you watch the candles often move very quickly up to certain locations, down to certain locations, and then turn around like this. And how do we know that that's what's controlling the markets? Well, because right now, if you look at this from CryptoQuant, you can see that the exchange reserves for Bitcoin are almost at all-time lows. Okay, this is the Bitcoin price here, and the exchange reserves are super low down. There's barely any Bitcoin left on exchanges for ordinary people to go and buy, okay? And that means that there's a supply shock coming, and when that supply shock hits, the markets will typically go up higher. And that's what we're seeing. Okay, so we've seen yet again the market makers use the opportunity to shake out the markets on serious, scary news hitting the world. And because this news has just hit crypto and hasn't really hit the global markets, this is why I'm not really expecting this to be anything more than what it's been so far, where we've actually seen Bitcoin dip a little bit, come back a little bit, now sits around $101,000. But I get it. You're like, I don't hold that much Bitcoin. I hold the altcoins, and the altcoins have been smashed. And let's have a look at how it's affected various different individual cryptos. Because I know right now, many people are using the opportunity to be like, yeah, it was a great idea to never hold altcoins. Actually, by never holding altcoins between 2023 and now, you would have missed out on some of the biggest returns possible. If you've been holding the likes of Solana since it was around $6, if you've been holding Sui from like $1, if you've been holding many other different altcoins, you would have made an absolute killing far beyond what you would have made just by holding Bitcoin. But I appreciate it doesn't feel like that. So let's have a look. So what we can see right now on the bottom is the others chart, on the top is the Bitcoin chart, and I've drawn all the lines on to match them up, and you can see basically what happens to others. Now in the early days, this is back on March 2023, where many of you weren't in the crypto markets, we didn't really see much, okay? Bitcoin went up, this just kind of went flat, went towards the side. We then have from the 22nd of January 2020, where we saw the FTX liquidation of assets fear, we then see Bitcoin surges towards the upside. The others chart also goes with it very strongly. A lot of AI altcoins did really, really well during this period, as did a lot of real-world asset coins like Ondo Finance and others. We see the market dip down towards the Japan carry trade. We then see the others going sideways for a good few months while Bitcoin kind of pushes back towards highs, moving from around 53k all the way up to 69k. Then we see the others chart suddenly just burst towards the upside. So around still here, we do see the others chart, the altcoins outside the top 10, going up a little bit. But during this time, we did see larger cap altcoins like Sui running really, really strongly. We then see this kind of pullback here, and then this kind of final move here where we saw the XRPs, Cardanos, H-bars going up like 8x or more. That basically happened here, okay? During a time where quantitative tightening was significantly higher than it is right now, during a time that we had higher interest rates than we do now, during a time of other things going on where people were speculating on Donald Trump coming in with tariffs and all those other things. We then see Trump tariffs come in here, and from there we then saw Bitcoin recover, and we saw a lot of altcoins seeing strong rallies again with it. That caused a lot of people to be pretty sad because many people weren't expecting Bitcoin to rally quite as aggressively out of here as it did. And altcoins then caused people again to FOMO in up at this high. But with Bitcoin selling off around 10%, many of the altcoins have returned back towards those April lows. And since many people didn't get into the April lows, they got in maybe a little bit after, they're now back in the red again and feeling the pain once again. Now, it's easy to sit here and say, well, if I just bought at the bottom of every single one of these, I would be sitting happy right now. But typically our brain doesn't work like that. We're typically told by everyone not to be getting into the markets around now, when actually, really, these are the better times, in my opinion, and historically, to be getting into the markets. Obviously not financial advice, but if you go back through history and you check every single time major negative news hits crypto, it has always been the perfect entry time. Okay, without fail, it has always been the perfect entry time. Whether it's into Bitcoin, whether it's into altcoins, the same story. And here the same again. Solana stayed flat through over here. It was sat around $20. It didn't really move much like that. This was basically a kind of a Bitcoin fueled recovery, mainly because Bitcoin was going through the ETF stuff at this point. Nothing else was really going on. So Bitcoin kind of moved up maybe more than it should have done. Moved up more than its fair value was at this point, which is kind of why we've got into this bull market we've got into, where it kind of has a lot of these false starts, gets exciting too early, has to cool off. And this is why the market makers are doing what they're doing, okay? The market makers are cooling things off, waiting for the liquidity to be there, so that when the liquidity is there, they can have the biggest bull market they can possibly have, because that's how they make the most money, okay? The market makers, while it seems like they're screwing us over right now, they're not really screwing us over. They're just holding the market back so they can have a nice, long, healthy life cycle, allowing for kind of global macro conditions to be expanding, okay? Right now, we're moving from a period of compression into expansion, and that's what they're kind of waiting for. If this just expanded too quickly and they didn't do anything over Christmas time, we'd just have Bitcoin go straight up, and then we'd be stuck in some like massive bear market like this. And then when the liquidity is actually in the market, everyone would be too sad about it anyway. Well, I know people are pretty sad right now, but I think most people would be pretty sad if Bitcoin found itself down into the top 70k levels and below. If we look at then what happens to Solana during these times, every single time Solana rallies very strongly out of this area, and you can see it has pulled back, but it's still much higher than it was back in April at those lows. Ethereum, same sort of story, again, has had strong periods of time buying into those lows. And yes, it does have pullbacks, but if you're taking profits around these points and buying back in on the dips, you're probably pretty happy. I know many people down below in the comments have been doing that. Sui, what's happened on Sui? If we look at Sui, in the lows, it goes up, then it pulls back, and then it goes up a lot, comes back, pulls up. It has pulled back recently, but again, it's higher than it was back in April. Okay, so yes, if you buy into the very tops, you're feeling the pain right now. I understand, we've all done that in the past, but ultimately, fear and worry typically signals the bottom, the returning point of the markets. But here's the main pain point, and I understand, right? This is back from 2024. This is Render. Just chose this coin, okay? It's a popular coin. Many altcoins have similar charts to this, and the highs get lower each time. You can see that this is basically where all these kind of fear events take place. And obviously on Render, if you bought in down here, you would have made an absolute killing. And again here, you still would have made money if you bought in here, but you can see it rolls over to prices that are lower. So if you're just hodling over time, it's been pretty painful. And there's a reason that these prices have come lower each time, and that's because actually around this point Bitcoin had never really had a major pullback. Okay, it had basically gone up pretty much in a straight line with only a few weeks of kind of sideways action, which meant that many altcoins could run very, very strongly up to this point with a 22-week basically continuous bull market. All of these bull markets that followed, however, only lasted for around 14 weeks from bottom to top. And that's what's kind of causing the pain points here. What we need is a more sustained, longer period of time to see the best returns. But still, if you see what Render was at before, back in April, it still saw a 109% push up. It's now just sat back in that zone, giving another opportunity for entry. Entering into these points always will eventually lead to the ultimate bull run. Basically, prices are chopping around right now in accumulation phases. If you look at Solana, for example, Solana came down in the last bear market. It then gets down to like $8.40. It goes up to like $27. Imagine people who bought in at $27 and then were like, oh, panic selling again. It came down 39% to $16. Or it came down even further to like $13. People sell up. A few weeks later, Solana's all the way up here at like $129. It then goes up to $211. Eventually it goes up to $299. Okay, buying into the lows obviously gives you the best kind of conditions. And basically through the market right now, you're basically just positioning yourself by buying scary dips, okay, and not buying the hype, waiting for the end of the bull market. Because the end of the bull market is where altcoins rally and go crazy. Okay, in between, you see like little peaks and troughs and stuff happen for altcoins. This is an accumulation zone. You accumulate during the accumulation zones, and then you take profits later on. For me, with the exception of some stuff back in December, where like Sui's and whatever got towards highs, took a little bit off the table. Mostly, I've just been sat waiting. To be able to see the best gains in altcoins, most of you have been positioned throughout this time. We've seen more chop than's been anticipated, but this, in my opinion, is just building into one of the biggest, most aggressive bull markets possible. And I think things like what we've just seen right now, with market makers doing shady things behind the scenes, with Bitcoin above $100,000 and the sentiment the lowest it's been since back in April where we saw those lows, things are looking pretty positive, okay? I think in the next 7 days to 14 days, market confidence will get restored and everyone will be like, oh, well, what's just happened, okay? It literally takes one green candle for everyone to turn around tomorrow and say, actually, things are all right, okay? So, obviously, I appreciate it's been frustrating. It's taken longer than anticipated. I get it. I feel your pain, okay? I wasn't anticipating to see us being stuck here and seeing such big pullbacks over the course of the 4 weeks or so that we've been here, okay? M2 money supply tells us that we were going to see a pullback that lasted a few weeks, but it's lasted maybe a week. But because it arrived at these levels maybe a week or two early, it's just meant that we've been stuck here for a bit longer. Eventually, M2, liquidity is flooding into the market, it's going to be pushing everything higher. Now, if you go and look at the liquidation heat map, you can see that there is some liquidity sitting down into these levels. Not necessarily a massive amount. Most of the liquidity now sits up here, like $17 billion, $27 billion sat up at around $110,000, $111,000. Effectively, when the market returns back towards these levels, it's going to do it very, very aggressively. And the fact that we've just had this fear worry event take place right now, to me, is probably one of the more bullish things that we could have seen, despite the fact it was painful and you probably didn't enjoy it that much. Ultimately, the global macro conditions that have been driving this crypto bull market from back at the start of this bull market, okay, which is things like the Fed silently easing through things like the Fed's repo market, okay, where we've basically seen around $2.5 trillion flooding back into global markets. Like we've seen M2 money supply going up as global countries are printing money like crazy. Maybe not the US just yet, but global countries are doing it. We're now seeing the US as well, buying back short-term bonds, which is again stimulating the market. All of these things are pointing to a further continuation towards the upside. Okay, the continuation towards the upside that looks like this, along the way, you always have scary things that cause fear. Eventually, we move towards more risk-off conditions up here, okay, which then results in stronger performances for altcoins. Typically, larger cap altcoins move first, and then the rest. To be best positioned in altcoins, effectively you need to buy into the dips and you need to be able to sit through up and down, scary news and all the other things. Okay, most people don't enter in and fear all this sort of scary news because typically people are entering into the top of markets like this and they think that everything's all brilliant and rosy until eventually this happens and then they end up with nothing. Okay, typically the best thing to do is to buy in down here. But you would have then had to sit through multiple chops through things like this COVID pullback that saw Bitcoin falling by like 50% in a single day before this bull market followed. Okay, so to be best positioned, kind of struggling through the pain, I get it. Try to keep your portfolio around some larger cap altcoins, okay? The Suis, the Solanas, the ETHs, okay? Yeah, they've fallen a little bit as well, but you know as well as I do, all of those coins are coming back to life as soon as this market returns bullish once more, and I don't think that's too far away. Now guys, I know it's been a really tough time, okay? Stick with it. Patience will pay off here. For those of you who've been involved in the markets since back in 2023, and you've kind of been patient, you've been buying the dips, you're probably learning these lessons, you're probably feeling that things are starting to make sense a lot more. It's really much easier if you zoom out and you pay attention to what the market makers are doing and what the news is telling you to do all the time. Now guys, if you want to buy crypto because the market's low right now, then I personally do it through different exchanges. I use WEEX, I use Bitunix, and now I've started using BloFin or BloFin as well. All of these three are linked down below. None of these exchanges require a KYC, and you can access a huge range of different altcoins with extremely low prices. They all come with decent sign-up bonuses, so make the most of the sign-up bonuses when prices are low because you can pick up some extra altcoins and get some even bigger bags right now. Let me know which coins you've been buying on these recent dips, and also tell me how high you think Bitcoin's going to hit all-time highs. Do you also think that this crypto bull market will end in 2025 or end in 2026? Let me know why down below in the comments. Guys, hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye-bye.